At my mom's funeral, my mother-in-law showed up with a smirk. She said, "This house will go to my son. Maybe I should pick a room now." I told her, "Actually, I'm the one getting this house." She argued, "But doesn't a wife's stuff belong to her husband? So technically, this house is my son's, right?" I sighed. She chirped, "Let's be friends now." I wasn't sure. "What do you mean?" She said, "I'll take over this room." I asked, "Are we living together then?" She said confidently, "Yes, that's the plan. This house is too good to be empty." I was still mourning, but my mother-in-law acted like nothing was wrong. "Why bring this up now? Can't she see I'm sad? This house is full of memories. It was built by my dad and cherished by my mom. I don't want my mother-in-law here, and my husband is letting it happen." To protect my beloved home, I took action before we moved in. I'm 42, work in an office, and thought I'd missed my chance at marriage. Then I met Michael, 4 years younger, through a friend, and we tied the knot. He's caring and values my input. "Where shall we honeymoon?" "You mentioned Europe, right?" I asked, "But you said you liked the Maldives." "Let's go there," he suggested. "My mom needs to stay with us. Dad's not well, and she's struggling alone," he explained. "I get it, but didn't we agree not to live with parents?" "You're right, I'll talk to her." My husband always indulges my wishes, which sometimes makes me feel guilty. Finding a good partner is a blessing, but there's a lingering sadness. My dad passed away 3 years before I got married, so I couldn't share my wedding with him. He was a strict boss at a small business, and I looked up to him. Despite the company's size, he earned well, and we had a decent home where we held his funeral. Working in an office made me appreciate my dad even more. Then 2 years after our wedding, my mom also passed away. "Your mom too?" My husband asked, concerned. "Do you need a moment in the other room?" Funerals usually aren't held at home, but we did it for my mom. Throughout my mother's funeral, my husband was there for me, a constant support. I felt incredibly lucky to have him. Then my mother-in-law, Nancy, arrived. "I'm so sorry for your loss," she said. "Thank you," I replied. I hadn't spent much time with Nancy before, keeping a respectful distance, but during the funeral, I saw a different side of her. Afterward, Nancy approached me, which wasn't unusual, but her demeanor was strangely cheerful. "Thanks for your help during the funeral. It went smoothly because of you," she said. "Now that it's over, let's drop the formalities." I was surprised. At first, I thought she was being considerate, given my grief, but it soon became clear that wasn't her intention. "Your parents had such a lovely home," I said. "Hold on a sec." She boldly ventured further into the house. "Mom, this isn't a good time. Some areas are a bit messy," I protested. Unfazed, she announced, "Don't worry about the details. What matters is, this house will go to my son. Maybe I should pick a room." I hesitated. "Mom, actually, I'm the one inheriting this house." She smirked. "Your parents didn't have any other kids, right? And doesn't a wife's stuff belong to her husband? So technically this house is my son's, isn't it?" I sighed. "Is that really how it works?" She chirped. "Let's just get along from now on." I paused. "What do you mean by get along?" She confidently replied, "I mean, I'll take this room. You and Michael will move in later, won't you?" I asked, "So we'll be living together?" She declared, "Exactly. It's settled. Such a grand house shouldn't have empty rooms when 2 people can live here. Finally, I won't have to take care of my husband alone. But my mother just passed away, and my mother-in-law is talking about this. Can't she see how sad I am? I'm starting to get angry, even though the funeral just ended. Why would she joke at a time like this?" My husband overheard our conversation and intervened. "Mom, what are you saying? This isn't the time for this." My mother-in-law brushed it off. "Why are you making such a fuss?" But my husband was firm. "Please leave." He escorted her out. "Sorry, she can be difficult." He'd apologized. "It's okay. Thank you for handling it," I said. In that moment, I appreciated my reliable husband. Yet later, I realized his reason for scolding my mother-in-law was subtly different from mine. 10 days after my mother's funeral, as things calmed down, we talked about my family home. Then my husband made an unexpected suggestion. "This apartment is cramped. Shouldn't we move to my parents' house?" I proposed. "You're right. With more stuff and maybe kids in the future, it's better than this tiny place," he agreed. "So we should start getting ready," he said, then added, "But there's something I want to discuss about the move." "What is it?" I asked. He hesitated. then said, "Considering the big house and empty rooms, I thought maybe my parents could move in with us." "Wait, you mean live together?" I was surprised. My husband is kind, but lately I've noticed something. While I thought he always valued my opinion, maybe he's just going along with things. Could he be too easily swayed? His suggestion about living with my mother-in-law, despite my objections, makes me wonder. He keeps bringing it up, putting my mother-in-law's wishes above mine. I've said it before. We're not living together, I remind him. But Mom won't let it go, he says. I argue. You stood up to her during the funeral. You defended me and said no to living together. Well, yeah, I was mad about her intrusion, but that doesn't mean I'm totally against it. I just didn't think it was the right time to decide, he explains. It's clear. He nods along and passes on my words, but he seems more inclined to agree with my mother-in-law. Plus, despite advocating for proper discussions, he keeps his distance and avoids making firm decisions. Maybe he thinks he's staying neutral, but people like him can be tricky. They convince themselves they're neutral and can make the right calls. It's frustrating. Anyway, I refused to live with someone who barged into my parents' house on the day of the funeral and suggested taking over a room. I've said it before, and I won't budge. Tell your mom that, I tell him. Why? It really bothers you, he responds. Fine, I'll tell her myself. Well, I had mentally prepared for the possibility of living with my in-laws when we got married. Witnessing my mother-in-law's behavior at my mother's funeral made it clear. Living together in my cherished family home, built by my father and lived in by my mother, is out of the question. And now, with my husband's lack of assertiveness apparent, the idea of cohabitation is unthinkable. When my husband relayed my opposition, my mother-in-law directly challenged me, asking why I was against it when we have such a spacious house. She insisted that as Michael's wife, his parents are now mine too. I've already declined living together. I'm sorry, but with my husband's mobility issues, it's too much for me alone, I explain. So you're abandoning us? Did you even listen to your husband's reasons? My mother-in-law counters. I'm sorry, but after this heartless response, I won't ask anything of you anymore, she retorts. I feel for my father-in-law's health, but based on my mother-in-law's past behavior, I can see a future where all responsibility for him would fall on me if we lived together. If that's the path we choose, significant changes in my husband and mother-in-law's mindset are essential. A few days after my mother-in-law's accusation, my husband began rearranging the living room, shifting furniture, and creating space. What's going on? Are we storing boxes here? I inquire. He responds, No, I'm making room for 2 beds. The mention of 2 beds sends a shiver down my spine. Are your parents coming to stay? I cautiously ask. No, they're moving in, starting today. This is truly the worst, he admits. Despite my objections to living together, my husband and mother-in-law have decided on it. She said she wouldn't rely on me anymore, yet she's turning to you instead. Why? I ask. He explains, their lease is up, so we agreed they'd move here instead of renewing. It'll be crowded for 4 people, but we're moving soon, right? Just bear with it for a bit. But that's not what I meant. Why is cohabitation even an option? I've said before I don't want to live with someone who barged into my parents' house on the day of the funeral and suggested taking over a room. I'll talk to Mom. From now on, we'll be living together, so please try to get along, he insists. Why do you always side with your mom? I question him. He explains it's not about favoring her. I consider both your opinions and make a decision. My husband, usually accommodating towards my mother-in-law, seems to have fallen into her cohabitation plan. Maybe he's unknowingly influenced by her, thinking he's making independent choices. I used to see my husband as kind and caring, but paired with my mother-in-law, he becomes quite a challenge, and now I'm reluctantly pushed into living with my in-laws, just as I feared. This apartment is too small for 4 adults. We'll manage until we move, I remark. It's frustrating. She just arrived, and now she's complaining about the room. I apologize for the sudden addition of 2 elderly people. We'll try not to inconvenience you. If your mobility issues cause any problems, please let us know. My father-in-law, Tommy, who has mobility issues, seems better than expected. He experiences minor discomfort when moving, but nothing serious. Was my mother-in-law genuinely struggling to care for him? He's polite and even offers to do things on his own. Unlike my mother-in-law, he doesn't seem troublesome, or so I thought. Is there a pharmacy nearby? I forgot my medicated patch and need to buy one, my father-in-law asks. Wait, dear. With your mobility issues, it's best to stay here. If you fall outside, it'll inconvenience Michael and others, right? Ask them to buy the patch for you, I suggest. But I usually buy it myself. Didn't they say to let them know if you need help? Well, you have a point. Sorry, but I need it urgently. Can you go get it for me? He sighs. Of course. While fetching a medicated patch might seem trivial, why does my mother-in-law make decisions without involving me? And though my father-in-law seems polite, he appears to follow my mother-in-law's lead, just like my husband. He's become her yes man. It's a small errand this time. But as we continue living together, I fear everything will eventually fall on me. Can I let these people move into my parents' cherished home? It's not a laughing matter. If they move in, they'll tarnish the house. I must find a way to protect my parents' legacy. As my mother-in-law and father-in-law prepared to move into my parents' home, I decided to take preemptive action. My mother-in-law was in good spirits, eager about moving into a spacious house. Hey, can we borrow the key to your parents' house? We want to check out our rooms. I have some errands, so I'll give the key to Michael, she requests. Michael, can you drop us off before heading home? We want to visit the storage room where we left our stuff. We need to measure furniture sizes, she adds. Sure thing. I'll take the key, I reply. Despite my mother-in-law's cheerful demeanor, there were no conflicts between us, and about 10 days passed uneventfully. However, behind the scenes, my preparations were steadily progressing. Okay, everything's set for the move. Life in that house will start soon, I announced once my husband and in-laws finished their preparations. I have something to discuss, I said. What is it? Spit it out, my husband urged. Is it about our move celebration plans? My mother-in-law wondered. No, we're not moving there, I clarified. What? What do you mean? She exclaimed. I handed over a document. This is my application to renounce my inheritance, I said. Renounce your inheritance? That's a joke, right? My husband protested. It's no joke. Look, it's officially approved by the court, I insisted. That house means a lot to me. I couldn't bear to see you living there, so I've decided to let it go, keeping it as a cherished memory in my heart, I explained. What madness possessed you? You could have sold it for money even if you were giving it up. Why abandon it? My mother-in-law scolded. Even if I sold it, you'd just rely on the money. I thought it'd be clearer if I had nothing, I reasoned. We moved out of our old place for this move, you know. What's going on? How will you make it up to us? She retorted. I've always opposed living together, yet you forced it on me without proper discussion. So I had to take a stand. I stood firm. Upon hearing that I renounced my inheritance, both my husband and mother-in-law were stunned, their faces drained. They were speechless, their energy depleted. My father-in-law looked puzzled as he watched them. But I'm not backing down, Michael. I pressed on. I've been considering divorce. What do you think? Divorce? My husband stumbled over the word. Michael, you should divorce this absurd wife immediately, my mother-in-law chimed in. I had expected her immediate call for divorce. What I wanted to know was whether my husband could make his own decision at this crucial moment. If he yielded to my mother-in-law now, our future together would be even more challenging. Even being suddenly asked about divorce is troubling, Mom, my husband muttered. His response was pending, but my determination to go through with the divorce had solidified. Fine, divorce is the only option, my mother-in-law snapped. Michael, it's unavoidable. Your mom is adamant, my father-in-law intervened. Well, it seems you also want a divorce, and maybe that's for the best. Even in significant decisions, my husband and father-in-law remained yes men to my mother-in-law. And now my husband's words made it seem like he was changing his mind for my sake. Very well, I declared. Let's proceed with the divorce. I'll move out with just the essentials. I spent the night at a budget hotel. The next day, I had urgent matters to attend to, so I took a half day off work and went back to the courthouse. A few days later, my mother-in-law called me. What's this about the house becoming yours? She demanded. Why the sudden concern? Did you learn about it during the estate division process? I asked. Yes, that house is rightfully mine. You forged documents and deceived us, she accused. Why would I forge court documents? Those are genuine, I replied. Then why is the house going to you when you were supposed to renounce the inheritance? She pressed. After that, I withdrew the renunciation application. Renouncing an inheritance is complex. Once filed, it takes about a month to be accepted, during which it can be withdrawn. The documents I showed were from the application stage, not acceptance. I made you believe I had given up the house and mentioned divorce to see your reactions and plan my next steps. I hoped Michael would oppose divorce. But your mindset didn't change, I explained. So the house really becomes yours? Since it was acquired before the divorce, it's subject to property division, right? She inquired. In such cases, you two would split the proceeds from selling it. She tried to assert her claim. But I had prepared for this. If it were jointly acquired, it'd be shared property. But it's inherited, so it's exempt from division. Unfortunately, specific assets like this aren't eligible for division. I reiterated. Did you consult a lawyer when you found out the house would be mine? She asked. If Michael had paid off the house loan or covered renovation costs, those expenses might have been considered, but I assumed that didn't happen. I replied. What about the money Michael would get through property division? She pressed. We've only been married a short time, so there's not much. Maybe just the car, though it still has a loan on it. I explained. You're selfishly claiming the inheritance, aren't you, heartless? She accused. I'm protecting my parents' memories. I don't want people like you in our home. If you have further complaints, consult a lawyer, I responded firmly. After the call, divorce proceedings went smoothly. Presumably, she urged my husband to divorce me promptly. Regardless, the divorce was finalized and I no longer had to deal with my in-laws. I felt relieved, as if I'd safeguarded my father's home. After I moved out, my former in-laws stayed in the apartment my ex-husband and I used to share. It wasn't spacious, so even with one less person, it must have felt cramped. They explored other housing options, but faced challenges due to their age. Eventually, my ex-husband rented a smaller single-family home for them to live in together. Though smaller, it's still a house, so the rent is likely higher than for the apartment. He'll need to support them going forward. My ex-husband is in for a tough time. My former mother-in-law was excited about the large house my father left behind, but now she's settling for a smaller home. I imagine she's disappointed. As for me, I've started a new life in my parents' house. It feels comforting, as if they're still with me. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing to the channel. Until next time, you're no longer an employee. What? What do you mean, you're fired? For 2 decades, I dedicated myself to the family business, working alongside my in-laws. Then one day, my husband dropped the bombshell. I was out of a job, dismissed unceremoniously in the wake of my father-in-law's passing. The reason? Supposedly, Catherine was slated to take over. Wait, hold on. Even if Catherine steps in, someone still needs to handle accounting, I protested. Isn't that vital? Catherine's boyfriend will handle it now. There's no need for you, my husband replied coldly. I couldn't believe it. Stunned, I turned to Catherine for some semblance of reason, only to be met with a smug smile. You should learn your place, especially as an outsider with such arrogance, she sneered. Enjoy your jobless life now. Lol. When Catherine returned, I not only felt excluded as a family member but also unappreciated for my 20 years of dedication to the company. All my efforts seemed futile. My father-in-law never openly praised me, but he would adopt my suggestions if he believed they benefited the company. However, with Catherine now in charge and seemingly viewing me as an adversary, I knew things wouldn't be the same. I no longer felt any attachment to the company. Very well then, I wish you all the best in ensuring the company's survival, I told Robert and the others, making the decision to part ways with the company. My name is Emily. I had always been adept at managing finances, having studied accounting in college and subsequently securing a position as an accountant at a prominent firm. It was during my tenure there that I met Robert, a younger man whom I encountered at a bar. He mentioned that he was assisting with his parents' recycling business. Talking to Robert was refreshing. Unlike my career-driven colleagues, he was more laid back and occasionally indecisive, which brought a new dynamic to our conversations. Robert seemed to enjoy my company, and we started meeting up for drinks, exchanging contact information. As our bond grew, Robert opened up about his family, particularly his ambitious sister, Catherine, who had a strong drive to excel. Catherine went to business school and worked in a corporate job afterward. She never showed interest in the family recycling business, Robert shared with a hint of frustration. She thinks it's too mundane to mention to her friends. Lol. Despite everything, Catherine always does things her own way. Robert sighed, revealing a mix of admiration and exasperation towards his sister. As we continued sharing family anecdotes, our connection deepened. After dating for some time, Robert proposed to me. Overwhelmed with love and unable to imagine life without him, I eagerly accepted his proposal. Emily, I have a favor to ask once we're married, Robert began earnestly. I want you to leave your current job and join our family business, the recycling business. My mother handles accounting right now, but she lacks formal training. You're an expert in that area, aren't you? I want you to take over our finances. Having grown weary of corporate life, the prospect of working for a family enterprise appealed to me. I resigned from my position at the major company as soon as we were married. I started my new role as the accountant for Robert's father's company. Upon reviewing the financial records, I discovered numerous errors made by my mother-in-law, who had no formal accounting background. I began by rectifying these mistakes and implementing a comprehensive financial overhaul. As I delved deeper into the workings of the recycling business, I identified opportunities to streamline costs and increase sales. Robert, there's something important I'd like to discuss with you, I said one evening, ready to present the cost-cutting strategies and business plans I had been developing. Robert glanced over the materials I had prepared and swiftly shared his feedback. This business plan looks promising. I'll discuss it with Dad and Mom. My proposal gained approval, prompting me to dive into implementing the cost-cutting measures and new business strategies with relentless dedication, often sacrificing sleep. As a result of these efforts, the company's performance steadily improved, enabling us to expand our team with new hires. As our business flourished, we garnered attention from the local community. I took proactive steps to connect with the community, transforming our business into a local hub. As time sped by, 2 decades slipped away since I first joined the company. While my dedication endeared me to the employees and locals alike, Robert and my in-laws seemed to overlook the extent of my commitment. Emily, dear, you're working so tirelessly. Do you ever take a break? A neighbor nearby voiced concern, but Robert chuckled dismissively. Oh, she's just passionate about her work. She's fine. Besides, even on her days off, she doesn't really have any hobbies. Haha. I've known this company since Robert's parents' time, but Emily is the reason for its growth, right? You should consider giving her a substantial bonus. She's my wife, so she doesn't need a bonus. Living off the company's earnings is more than enough. Despite concerns voiced by those around me, I found fulfillment in my work and in contributing to the community. The lack of days off or bonuses didn't bother me. What did concern me, however, was Robert's frequent late nights out. Robert, you've been going out a lot at night lately. Where are you going? I'm networking, expanding my contacts. If it's for business, can't you do it during the day? Stop nagging. I have my own way of doing things. You, just an accountant, should keep quiet. I understand. Please inform me if there are any work-related issues. Yeah, sure. Robert appeared irritated, growing increasingly distant from home. One day, I received a call at home from a warehouse belonging to one of our business partners. Emily, something awful has occurred. Bob, who was there to collect the goods, collapsed suddenly. What? My father-in-law, Bob, was taken to the hospital. Unfortunately, due to the severity of his injuries from the fall, he didn't make it. The sudden death brought many of our business partners and community members to the funeral to pay their respects. After a long absence, Catherine, who had moved out after finding employment, returned and was surprised by the large turnout. I always thought this company was on the brink. When did it become so successful? She remarked. It's all thanks to Emily. She revitalized the company, boosted profits, and expanded our operations. She even proposed profit sharing, which lifted our spirits. Seeing her dedication motivates all of us, one employee explained. What's so impressive about improving a small company's performance? Catherine muttered, clearly displeased by the praise directed towards me instead of her. From then on, Catherine treated me with disdain whenever our paths crossed, dismissing me like a mere servant. Emily, I'm feeling a bit thirsty. Could you fetch me a cold drink? Hurry up, I'll make tea if you prefer. I've asked for something cold. Perhaps you don't grasp this having worked in smaller companies, but in larger ones, the boss's directives are final. Although I'm not sure you're my boss, let's not split hairs. In our family hierarchy, I'm above you. Following the funeral, Catherine summoned Robert and my mother-in-law into a separate room. "Robert, Mom, I'd like to discuss our family's future. Please join me." Glancing coldly at me beside Robert, Catherine added, "Emily, this is a family matter. Your presence isn't necessary." I stood stunned as Catherine ushered Robert and her mother away into another room. An hour later, Robert casually broke the news to me. I'd decided to let Catherine take over the company. Wait, what? So the family discussion was about deciding the company's next leader after Dad. Robert, not assertive enough to take the helm, and our mother, reluctant to lead, left Catherine to step forward. Seeing their hesitation, Catherine confidently offered to take on the CEO role, a proposal they readily accepted. "But Catherine has never been involved in this company. Is that even wise? Stop interfering in family matters with your annoying comments," Catherine snapped. "I've fought for this family and dedicated myself to this company. You can't just dismiss me like this." "What? You're firing me?" "Wait, even if Catherine takes over, we still need someone to handle accounting, right? I've been managing it all these years. Catherine's boyfriend will take care of it now. We don't need you anymore. This is unbelievable." "Know your place, Emily. Enjoy your time off." When Catherine returned, I not only felt like an outsider in the family, but also saw my 2 decades of dedication to the company dismissed as inconsequential, my job taken away. The struggles and efforts felt utterly futile. While my father-in-law never openly praised me, he valued my contributions to the company. With Catherine, who views me as a rival in charge, that respect is gone. I no longer have any attachment to this company. "All right then, good luck with everything," I said as I decided to leave the company behind. After seeing Robert off, I started a new chapter at home. A few months later, Catherine and Robert unexpectedly showed up at my doorstep. "Catherine, what's going on? What's this about?" I asked, puzzled. "Our company's performance has been declining since you left. Did you not handle the handover properly?" Catherine questioned sharply. "What? I did everything necessary for the handover. Why do you think the performance has dropped? Have you been reviewing the monthly expenses? You need to accurately calculate the revenue versus expenses, otherwise, you'll end up in the red. I've always handled that. I studied management, unlike you. Isn't the real issue how the business is being managed?" Catherine retorted sharply. "Even if that's true, if you have suggestions, we're all ears," Robert interjected patiently as I remained silent. "Emily must be bored just staying at home. If you come back to help out, I can offer you some compensation," Robert suggested, his tone changing from his previous dismissal. Despite previously pushing me away, his sudden plea for my return, now that the business is struggling, leaves me uncertain. I appreciate that offer, but I decline. I have no desire to return to that company. Upon hearing my refusal, Catherine became incensed. "What? You're just a full-time housewife now, and you dare to reject us like this? Don't you care about our family's company? You're the one who seems not to care, even though you're the CEO now. How can you say I don't care? Weren't you the one who used to call the company plain and boring? You only took on the CEO role because the title female CEO sounded trendy and gave you something to boast about. Don't act holier than thou. On what grounds are you making these accusations? Your boyfriend, Zach, mentioned it to me during the handover. So what? Regardless of the reason, I stepped in when there was no successor to save the company. Save the company? I believe the current downturn is because of you, Catherine. What do you mean? I often hear neighborhood customers gossiping during the day while I'm at home. They've seen you shopping with Zach and even traveling during work hours. Those were business trips. In my 20 years at the company, I've never known an accountant to go on business trips. Can you specify which clients you were meeting? Why should I disclose that to you? You're not part of the company anymore. Your boyfriend seems quite targeted in his actions. During the transition, he bragged about using company funds for shopping and travel, now that his girlfriend is CEO. Catherine's expression twisted with anger. Zach, he can't keep his mouth shut. Employees won't respect a CEO who appoints her boyfriend as accountant and misuses company funds. Isn't the issue with your actions and those of your boyfriend? My words elicited a sharp glare from Catherine. Catherine, is this true? If so, it could be considered embezzlement. That's not true. She's just making baseless accusations. Then let's audit the accounts. Zach doesn't seem to have a grasp of accounting, so any discrepancies are likely to be glaring. There should be clear evidence of misuse. Catherine's face drained of color at the suggestion. Seeing her reaction, Robert turned on her. Appointing you CEO was a mistake. I'll inform Mom and have you removed. No, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Please forgive me. Catherine left in disgrace. Left alone, Robert turned to me with desperation. Emily, we need your help to save the company. Please come back. As I've said before, I have no intention of returning. But aren't we married? No, our marriage is over. I handed the divorce papers to Robert. What are you talking about? If you divorce without returning to work, you'll be in a tough spot. How do you plan to support yourself? I'll manage. Look, I showed Robert the job offer from the major company where I had previously worked. After being let go, I actively searched for opportunities and learned that a former colleague now worked in HR. She remembered my performance and advocated for my rehire. Just because I found a job doesn't mean we have to divorce. No, there's a reason for the divorce. I've been worried about you coming home late since just before your father passed away, so I hired a detective agency to investigate you these past months. They found plenty of evidence of your affairs. I handed Robert a photo showing you with an unknown woman. What is this? If there's proof of an affair, I'll be seeking alimony from you. With undeniable evidence before him, Robert had no choice but to agree to my terms. He signed both the divorce papers and the alimony agreement. With those documents in hand, I packed my belongings and left our home. Later on, Robert and his mother removed Catherine from her position, making Robert the company president. Simultaneously, they terminated Zach, and his mother resumed her former role in accounting. After her dismissal, Catherine struggled to secure another job, hindered by her high expectations. She eventually settled for a part-time position, becoming the subject of mockery among her social circle. It appears Catherine was only valued for her wealth. Once she took up part-time work, her partner left her for someone else, leaving Catherine swiftly abandoned. Under Robert's ineffectual leadership and his mother's lack of accounting expertise, the company's performance plummeted. Employees departed, and the company eventually went bankrupt. Robert and his mother found themselves overwhelmed by debt. Rumor had it that Robert's mistress disappeared upon learning of his financial ruin. Robert, inexperienced in corporate work, struggled to secure only part-time jobs and faced challenges in repaying his debts. He also had the responsibility of caring for his elderly mother, who couldn't work even part-time, making life difficult for them both. Meanwhile, I reacquired my former skills and am performing effectively at the major company. My return has been welcomed by former colleagues who appreciate my contributions, and I'm duly recognized and rewarded for my dedication. Finding myself valued and respected for my work reaffirms that my rightful place is where I am needed. I am committed to continuing to work diligently to meet the expectations